What's up, everyone? Branders, branding enthusiasts, and everyone interested in the world of branding. This is the Talking with Branders podcast. I'm your host, Steven Pacanza, and boy, do we have a good episode on hand today. I am joined by John and Tim from the Agency Guide. I'm going to let them get into who they are and what they do in a bit. Okay, guys, thanks for coming to the studio. It's kind of surreal to have you both actually sitting down in the studio. So much of this podcast has been on Zoom, so I'm super grateful that you guys are here. Tim, John, introduce yourself and the Agency Guide.
Yeah, sure. Well, my name is Tim Martinez. For those of you that don't know me or haven't seen me or haven't heard my voice, hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Longtime consultant, worked in the world of agencies for, I want to say a good 10 plus years. John and I started working together about 10 years ago, and we kind of live and breathe all things agencies and how to help brands and just groups drive more traffic, tell their story in a better way, and really try to be the central point that connects those two pieces.
Yeah, 100%. And John Bertino from the Agency Guide founded the operation also about 9-10 years ago with the goal of providing an efficient and thoughtful way for brands to find and hire the best possible marketing agencies. We provide pro bono consulting for brands that want to make sure they're investing marketing dollars in the right marketing channels to begin with, and then an efficient way in which to find the ideal marketing agencies to work with. So yeah, that's the core thing in a nutshell.
We're talking about brands, and marketing now is so interwoven. Digital, there's brand, there's PR, there's so much, right? It's almost like making a pasta fazool. It's like making a soup. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what is, and you two veteran marketers, like what is the recipe for creating a brand that can really transcend time?
Wow. Creating a brand that can transcend time. That's a great question. Well, let's think about the components of brands that have transcended time. There's a through line with all these brands. Mercedes, Rolls-Royce, Buddha. I see Buddha up on the wall. We call him a brand.
He has indeed stood the test of time, for
sure. Core values. Like, you don't have to think very hard about who they are and what they are. You know what they are, right? If I were to say Rolex, we all exactly know what Rolex is, right? You're not scratching your head. What is Rolex? Well, I don't know. Like you could say Four Seasons. We know what's happening here, right? Yeah. So when someone starts talking about their brand, is it intuitive? Do people know what that is, or do they have to scratch their head? I spoke with a group yesterday. They said, it's just so hard to talk about what we do. I'm like, well, that's the opposite of how Rolex talks about what they do. We make the best timepieces for generations, or whatever it is. I don't know what their tagline, but something like that. Right?
It should be what you just said, Rolex. You take a note from Tim.
Hello. Give me my royalties 10%.
It's that consistency, right?
It's a consistency, right? So do you have theater of the mind when you hear the word, right? And it doesn't have to be high end, by the way. We know what McDonald's is.
Right.
99-cent store. I mean, we know what these things are for a reason. Their brand is very clear. So if you're not clear on what your brand is, then how could you possibly build a brand that lasts for generations?
Yeah. And so that consistency and that ability to be clear, I think, ultimately stems through going through a more formalized process of sussing all that out, right? And that might seem like kind of like a standard no-brainer, but every day we talk to brands that never put in the proper time, or because they're so close to it day in and day out, they just go, oh, well, we know who we are.
Right.
But do you really? And, with one of the, it's been said before, I think it's our universal hero and Marty Neumeier who says that your brand is not necessarily what you think it is, it's what your customers say it is, right?
Right.
And so if you're defining your brand simply by, your own ideal of how you want to be seen, that's not a bad first step, but ultimately you need to have some third-party data, some data that's flowing in from your customers or other resources that's helping inform the way you're perceived in the marketplace so that you can start to craft an authentic message that's true to that.
Yeah.
Tim, you were mentioning Rolex, and John, when you talk about authentic, we're going to get to that in a second. and how much I hate that word nowadays. Tim, you were talking about Rolex. The thing I always find so interesting about watches, like high-end watch brands, if you look at their ads, oftentimes you're going to see multi-generational approach to their creative. A grandfather, a father, and a son, right? Because the idea is, and I forget who, I think maybe it's Philippe, what's that?
Patek Philippe.
Yeah, you don't own one; you merely take care of it for the next generation.
Brilliant,
right? And that's really what it comes down to. John, you had mentioned about being an authentic brand. I don't know. It's just, to me, the word is played out, right? It should be kind of, without saying you should be an authentic brand, right? It should kind of be one. What's your take on this word these days, and how, with so much inauthenticity out in the world, especially within media, how can brands be authentic?
Well, first things first, I think there's probably a lot of different ways to answer that question. There's not one way to do it. But the first thing that comes to mind is actually, I think you need to show a little personality. Let's start there. If it's the old, how's the expression go? If you don't stand for something, then you don't stand for anything.
Nike.
Right. Okay. Right. So, being open to showing a little bit of your true colors, being open to giving a little bit of your personality, being open to maybe support certain causes or factions or groups that demonstrate a little bit about your brand personality. If you don't stand for anything, then people are going to define you for you.
Yeah, good point.
Right? And so you can't be authentic without first giving a little something. I think that's where it starts. And then what it is you choose to show, I think people's subconscious is pretty acute. Not always, but people can often tell when someone's being inauthentic, or, maybe just paying lip service to a certain cause. And that goes back to, if you're going to choose to align with a certain cause or say you're about something, well, it better really truly be aligned with core beliefs that you have, either as a company or as an individual, or otherwise it's going to show through.
We almost start talking about purpose in a sense, and purpose marketing, right? Purpose marketing is a thing. A lot of brands want to attach to a cause or a purpose. Statistics show that especially millennials and Gen Z are like 4 to 6 times more likely to purchase from a brand that is purpose driven. That's why you see brands like Bombas and Tom's shoes, the buy one give one, is authentic. Now, for a brand like that, like a Bombas or a Tom's shoes, let's just use those brands as an example. How do they go around being authentic when their business model is predicated on purpose? Like, how do they continue to live that out in everything from a marketing perspective without shoving the idea of we're purpose driven down everyone's throat?
Sure. Should I field that one, or you want to field that one?
Have at it.
Yeah. So my first thinking is that you don't necessarily want to attach your business model to a gimmick. I mean, so just to be clear, Tom's thing is that a certain percentage of all proceeds go to support is an environmental cause. Is that correct?
Like
or no?
buy one get one.
Yeah, I think they give away a shoe.
That's right.
Yeah. Same with Bombas socks.
Right. So I hate to call that a gimmick because it's a beautiful thing they're doing. But it could be that at some point that becomes irrelevant or played out. And so I think it's not about attaching yourself to we are going to give away a pair of shoes, as it is that our company is dedicated and focused to helping those in need of, I don't know, what, apparel or shelter or basic goods, right? I think it stems from that place, right? We're about helping this certain faction of society and not necessarily about giving away a pair of shoes. And that, back to your first question about transcending time, right? When you're not tied to something really specific, like giving away shoes, and instead tied to providing value to a cause or faction of people, I think that allows you to be more flexible and transcend.
No, I think I love what you had said about not attaching it to the business model, because I think that's so true, right? Like, we just need to, brands need to always, continue to stay relevant, and that's how they're going to transcend time, right? That relevancy part. I sense a little, John, from you, a little sassiness around the idea of of this a brand being authentic and always, living up to it. So I want to ask you a question that kind of stems from that is like, what really annoys you about branding?
Oh boy. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is ironically similar from where we just were in the conversation, which is, so it's really everything we've already discussed wrapped together, which is when it feels like a brand is just aligning with a certain cause because it's trendy, or paying lip service to a certain, current plot line or what it's cool to say and be about, but it's not stemming again from an authentic place.
Budweiser. I'm gonna take it up a notch.
Oh,
Budweiser. Hey, talking with branders. We're getting provocative here, and we're asking the hard questions. Budweiser is a little bit. Are they alienating their audience?
To be honest, that's a fantastic call. It's a perfect example of what I was trying to articulate, but you did a better job maybe of bringing it home with that example. It's like even if they are about. So in this case, I think for the listeners that everybody probably knows, but for those that don't, right? And let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. They did an ad that paid homage or respect to the transgender community,
Correct.
right? There's, absolutely nothing wrong with that. At least the essence of what they're trying to say, right? I support that as well. But is it consistent with their brand? Right. Is that what they're about? It seems like such a sharp detour from the trajectory they've been on for however many decades at this point.
Right.
And so, yes, it comes off, at least to me, as being really inauthentic and just riding a current trend that you're really not aligned with.
Yeah.
And so you start to think about, well, what would have been a better cause or more appropriate cause for them to get behind? And I could probably guess who their core demographic has been to date or who their core target audience is. Well, what's a true core value that Budweiser has that is in direct alignment with their core customer, their core audience? That would be the market to appeal to.
Yeah. Tim, I'm anxious to hear your perspective. And interestingly enough, Tim, you come from LA, but you live in Nashville now. Mm-hmm. Is Nashville a Budweiser town? No, first and foremost. And what's your take on this?
Careful, Martinez. Careful.
Well, I'm not much of a beer drinker. I would say Nashville is more of, and I think most places are more that bespoke custom beer. It's actually kind of cooler now to be into some weird IPA from some basement with some dudes, right?
Yeah, Tim talking about Budweiser is inauthentic.
But I will say this.
Next question.
When I think of
I tried
Budweiser,
to give you an out, buddy. I tried to give you an out.
When I think of Budweiser, I think of my grandfather who worked in construction.
Yeah.
From Mexico with all his buddies, and they would sit out and, there's tough men, hardcore men, and I'm like, I want to be like my grandpa. I want to have a mustache and do the whole thing and hammer nails and work with concrete in my hands. Budweiser, this is what they drink. This is a man's drink. That's how I grew up thinking about it. I did not think about it any other way, and I still don't.
Yeah.
Regardless of what's transpired. But Nashville, like more of that cool, hip, trendy kind of thing, which I think goes along with the narrative of the day. So if Budweiser is trying to compete with these up and coming, bespoke brands, let's be honest, they own a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, how are they going to tap into that audience that's a little more, edgy, if you will? A little more abstract, it kind of scratches that itch.
The fringe, right?
They're on the fringe. Exactly.
And I think like a lot of these craft beer drinkers, they like living on the fringe, and they like that idea of being brewed in someone's basement. But
if you think of just a commodity like butter, you go to the store, you buy butter. Do you really care what brand it is? No, we're playing the price game.
Yeah.
2 for $4, fine.
Or the brand affinity game.
Sure, that too. So, if you saw a logo slapped on your butter, it's not going to change the fact that you're still going 2 for $4 versus 1 for $4.49 at Ralph's. Like, it's really not, because it's just a commodity. Water. I need water,
Well, how do you explain
water.
liquid death?
Well, brand.
Fucking brand.
But I would expect that from them because that's how they came to the game.
Right.
That same 2 gallon of milk that I've been buying since I was a kid for 40 years. Like, that's not how they entered the market. That's not how they're going to leave the market. It's the banner that they're waving. It's just, we're milk for $2.
That's an interesting thought. Like if Aquafina suddenly you saw it on the shelves and it had this like badass brand and this
Right.
really sharp messaging and
Yeah.
you know specific positioning, is that the worst thing they could do? Do they suddenly go so narrow that they alienate a large swath?
Like you
or
buy
portion of their
ice,
base?
right? Do you need branded ice? How much is ice at the store? A couple bucks?
Yeah.
Does it need to be branded? Does it need a brand? Is it going to change your opinion if this one is $2 and that one's $1 and they're the same 5-pound bag of ice?
And branding ice, that's a good.
Does it matter?
right there.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? No,
Who
no, it
cares?
doesn't. It
Who
doesn't.
cares? So spending money on brand, I mean, now maybe that's white space in the market and we should build an ice brand.
I'm in.
Yeah, I used to sling ice cube trays on Amazon back
Let's
in
go.
the
We
day.
used to go ice blocking. You ever do that?
I know ice blocking. Yeah, yeah. Never
That's how
done it
old I am.
though.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
In LA, you go ice blocking.
Yeah, it was the last ice block machine. We used to buy them for like $2 and then take them to the golf course and go sledding. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know how we got here.
Well, you know,
Clever pivot.
clever. No, absolutely clever. And I think a lot of what we're saying, right? Like we live in such an interesting time, right? Social media. I mean, everything has been said about social media that can be said about it, but how are brands being able to cut through? And I'm actually really excited to ask this question to you two really savvy marketers. Social media and the algorithm, everyone's trying to beat the algorithm and everyone's trying to get a leg up. Like how are brands navigating being on social media, number one, and number two, like just staying relevant to their audience?
Oh,
Oh boy.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
I'll say a quick thing here. Then
ahead.
I'll hand
Sure.
it off. So it's the algorithms are a real thing.
Yeah.
The algorithms are real for you audience out there. Yeah, you have to pay attention. You can't pretend they're not there.
Yeah.
So there are certain things that you can do that are just going to help you, right? Swimming with the stream versus up the stream, because it's just, right, more content, more relevant content. I mean, this is really like the foundation of SEO and keywords and hashtags and all. It's all means something. But if you don't have any purpose behind what you're posting out there and you're just hoping it's resonating, but it's really not even resonating with you, you're just doing it because someone told you should post 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Which is the classic AG. Let's be honest. All agencies will tell you should post about 2 to 3 times a week.
So
You should
true.
post about 2. And Gary Vaynerchuk would say you should post about 10 to 20 times a day. And people are like, well, I can't do that. And it's like, well, how bad do you want it? Oh, I don't want it. Well, then what are you doing on social? Go somewhere else where you don't need it. Go to direct mail.
So you're saying that the brands need to just overly post in order to beat the algorithm?
Well, it depends why you're using social media. If you're using it as, if someone checks me out, I'm in a business-to-business environment. If someone goes looking for me, they're going to find something that's somewhat new. But social media is not driving business. It's just a little bit of paint on the walls. It's not a traffic driver. If you're in e-commerce and you're a fashion brand, you should be cranking.
Yeah.
You should be cranking.
Yeah.
If you're an influencer or YouTuber, you have some extension business and it's all about the consumer, go hard, right? But if you're an ice brand, do you need social media? If you sell ice,
All roads point back to ice.
It always does. I mean, really,
Oh,
no, you
man.
just kind of need the distribution. You just need to get your ass in the stores, right?
we're
Like,
starting an ice brand.
We
You heard
totally
it
are
here
starting
first.
an ice
All right.
brand.
All right, John.
Heat
Let's
ice,
hear it.
we're going to call it. John, well, what's your take on and on social?
Sure. I so many kind of random disparate thoughts when it comes to social media. And in some ways, I feel like it's a very polarizing subject because of what a time and resource suck it can be. So I'll start by drawing a distinction between small business and businesses with plenty of resources to put into social. Because we do a lot of consulting with small businesses at TAG, and we regularly need to have kind of a come to Jesus, for lack of better phrasing, discussion about social. And I think for a lot of small businesses, unless they have lots of time, I think they're wasting a lot of time on social. The resources, the manpower, the dollars needed can often be put in better places. That said, at some point, you must have a social media strategy, and you really got to get it right at some point. Now, I think Tim, next layer here, made an interesting discussion or alluded to an interesting point about kind of B2B versus consumer-facing brand. The more consumer-oriented you are, I think that starts to tip the scale of toward importance with social media. Again, distinction where you're a brand with maybe not a tremendous amount of marketing resources and you need to be very discerning and prudent. I think the more consumer focused you are, the more it makes sense to lean into that.
Yeah.
The more commoditized you are, the more it makes sense to lean into it, because you have to find a way to develop your own unique voice and brand to differentiate in a highly commoditized market. Whereas, for example, if, I don't know, you're selling an IT service in South Jersey, again, probably better places you could put a small marketing budget than social.
Yeah.
Having said all of the prior, if and when it's time to pursue social and pursue it seriously, I think it's still a game of being careful with what channels you put the time, effort, and energy to. I think a lot of us came up in this idea of, okay, there's this social media thing now. We need to be on all the channels. We need to be on Twitter. We need to be on LinkedIn.
Do you need a MySpace?
Right.
Do you need a MySpace?
I just canceled my MySpace last week.
You canceled it?
I just canceled it.
Why would you cancel it?
Last week, 15 years ago is what I meant. It was April 2008. So anyway, once you really are going to embrace it, you should be really careful about what channels you're actually going to utilize. And then at the end of the day, all roads point back to content, but quality content. But what is quality content? Which opens up.
What is quality content?
Opens up Pandora's box, please.
I'd like to play a quick game, very quick game.
Okay. Does that have to do with ice?
No.
Nothing.
It should.
Should do
At some point.
It should. But it's the three whys. So
Three Whys?
Stephen,
Wives or
why? WHY?
The three Whys.
Yeah.
Wise. Okay. All right,
Steven.
Simon Sinek, what do you got?
Do you need a social media presence?
Why?
Right. Exactly.
Well,
Right. Why?
That was only one.
Because I have a business.
why?
Because I want to make money.
Why?
Because I want to support my family and make sure that they're taken care of.
Why?
So, because I don't know who I am to the core, and I'm just trying to waste time.
No. This is actually a
Right.
really, really good game that we play in the brand world. It is the why game.
Yeah.
But we're gonna play this game again. Do it with me.
Okay. Do you need a social media presence?
Why? Yes. Why?
Why?
No.
Oh, I'm doing it.
No. You can ask me again. Well, because you need to grow your business, and I say why, and then because I need to put food on the table. Why? Because I want my kids to grow up with something I didn't have. Why? Because I'm going to die one day.
Right.
Right? It all goes down to you're going to die one day. And it's a game that we play to find a really sticky insight.
That's a good
And
point.
so Emily Harris, she wrote a great book called Obsessed, and she is the CEO of Red Antler.
Okay.
You guys familiar with Red Antler, the creative agency? They're the agency
Yes.
behind Casper and Warby Parker, and her whole deal. She's been in a couple of chapters of this book. Actually, we might even have it in the one right behind us. Is the idea that we're all going to die one day, right? In order to drill down and ask why so many times until why do I want to start to become going to die one day, and if I don't do it, I'm never going to do it. I'm going to die.
Right.
And like at that moment when you could talk about like that right before that death moment, that's where the really great insight is.
So I will say that one of the things that occurs a lot in these conversations, and we speak with a lot of groups in a given week. A lot is a very broad, vague term, but at the end of the day, what I hear constantly is, I want more sales.
Yeah.
I want more sales. Do I need to be on social media? Well, what do you want? I want more sales.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this can help you get there, but we're not talking direct response per se. We're not talking advertising and traffic and clicks and conversions. We're talking social media, your voice.
That's top funnel.
Represent top funnel,
That's
right?
exactly what I was trying to say earlier, in that if your goal is I want to shell out $20,000 to a marketing agency this quarter and have them show me what they can do, there's a good chance organic social is not going to get you as the business owner the ROI you're looking for.
And that's a hard truth.
Yeah.
It's a very hard truth.
It's actually extremely obvious, and yet I feel like not discussed enough.
Yeah.
And so somebody mentioned my homie Gary V. I love Gary. Tomorrow I'm headed to Gary's conference. Shout out VCon 2023. But you would think from a distance that Gary says everybody needs to be on social all day long, all day, every day. And that's just not the truth of it. And almost always, if you're looking for a more immediate and short-term ROI, there's better places to put the dollars. It could be organic social ads. I mean, let's draw that distinction.
Sure, yeah.
Right? I mean, social,
But that becomes the paid plan at that point.
Right.
Organic social ads now paid promotions.
It's totally different.
Right. Organic is no money behind it, just posting
Right.
to
Yeah.
post.
But this is a tag plug, by the way, and this is one of the distinctions that we help clients think through,
Yeah.
because they sometimes don't have context. So they talk to a John Bertino and they're like, whoa, I came in thinking I needed social media. All of a sudden you started breaking it down for me. And now I know what I really need. And you did it in such a way that was honest with a lot of integrity.
Objective.
And very objective. Yeah.
Well, that brings an interesting question about this idea of like a sleepwalking customer, right? Like, how do brands communicate with customers that maybe are on their social, but they're sleepwalking and they're not really active and they're not engaging?
just like scrolling endlessly.
Yeah, I mean, you know, think about the boomers who just scroll. Think about the people who are, listen, we have a mental health crisis on hand, and a lot of it is because of the way the algorithms are and enticing you just to freaking scroll, and then you become a sleepwalker. Like, how are brands, like, how do you cut through that? And what do you recommend, or what's your diagnosis of that?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So you got to stand out, which is, you know, obvious to say, but how do you do that? And so, you know, that's really where branding comes in. And that's probably where you were hoping I'd go with this answer, right? Because so let's start with the creative side. You need your creative to stand out, your ad visual, so to speak. So we're talking social ads versus a search ad where there's no creative, really, just messaging. We'll get there next. And I think, you know, we're in a place with social media where the bar keeps getting raised. It's a familiar conversation I have all the time with brands is, you know, what worked or what was par for the course in just 5 years ago in 2018 is not good enough now, right? It's less and less static ads, more video, more short form. It's got to pop. And so production value is back. This is one of my big talking points right now. You know, I think we've gone through this period where it was like, hey, look, just get it done, do it with an iPhone, it's good enough. And while generally speaking, I'd say that's still true, it's better than nothing, production value is back because you got a lot of other marketers out there whipping out a cell phone and just grabbing something. Okay, great, you need to elevate above that. That's the first thing. And then also, you know, if you can have a really tight, well-refined brand identity that doesn't just come naturally. Again, I'm speaking largely from small business perspective. I mean, a big business with lots of marketing dollars, they've got tight brands. But your typical small business, they oftentimes have sloppy brands. So carve out a little bit of that marketing budget, tighten up that identity, and that'll help make your creative pop and stand out. And then, of course, that segues to messaging, which to some extent we already talked about. But you need to put the time, effort, and energy into actually making that message hit and do so quickly. So that's final point on this. Quickly is key, right? Because people's attention spans, you talk about sleepwalking, you might not even have their attention. And when you do, you have it for what, 10, 13 seconds, maybe less, like a goldfish. Yeah. So that messaging, you need to be able to clearly and concisely articulate what you're about as fast as possible. And that takes some real work and time and energy to be able to do that.
Yeah, that foundation, that brand foundation is so paramount to every marketing touch point out there, right? Because it's all going to be predicated on that. And I think the problem with a lot of businesses, and a lot of big businesses also suffer this. Having worked with a lot of big businesses that have a lot of resources, oftentimes there are channels out there that they are lackluster, they have a bad logo, a bad design, something doesn't look right. And so, you know, there's a lot of value in taking a step back and always reevaluating your brand. I actually just wrote a blog post about this on my All About Branding newsletter on take a day off. Take a day. It was Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I read that. I read that. I liked it.
If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, you're going to miss it.
So here's an interesting challenge for anyone out there, and I think it'd be a well worth challenge. Do you think you could sell a product with an ad that could only have a word on it, one word? If the ad was just one word, no visual, just one word, do you think you could sell a product? Do you think you could sell a product if the ad was just a picture, no words?
Love that.
That's really good.
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But I have a hunch that our ice company, if it was just a word, because I'm bringing it back, it's called a callback. And we could do it.
What's the one word?
Well, the one word would have to be
Chill.
heat.
Chill.
Chill is a good one, or maybe like refresh might be another one.
Right, but don't we get so, overloaded with words and videos and GIFs, and that's what the internet's full of, is chaos. So what if you went upstream and you're the unchaotic ad?
It's a fantastic point, because if you can convey the message in one image or one word, you've found a way to be concise and clear on what you stand for and sub-communicate that through as little as possible. And that's really the key to your sleepwalking question.
No, that's absolutely right. I'm going to change the subject completely, but not really, in talking about the brevity that we're talking about, right? One word, one piece of creative. And John, you used the term polarizing earlier about how social media could be so polarizing. Let's talk about LinkedIn and personal branding for a second, and how polarizing certain figures are on LinkedIn. Everyone's trying to break through the clutter and the noise. And from a personal brand perspective, you two both have fantastic personal brands. John's the host of the Niche Marketing Podcast. Tim is with the Inside Man. It's an entrepreneur group. So you guys have fantastic personal brands out there. How are you leveraging a platform like LinkedIn, if at all?
Well, I'm very careful with LinkedIn, and a lot of people I know are also very careful with LinkedIn.
How come?
Because you don't know what LinkedIn can do for you in 20 years from today, right? If, let's say, for example, a Fortune 500 company is looking for you, and they're like, man, we've been looking for a badass CMO, and we found your profile, and yeah, you're the guy. We've seen everything you post. You've been very meticulous with how you do this. Versus if they went to your Facebook page. In 20 years from today, if they went to your Facebook page and like, oh yeah, you're at the bar with your buddies and at the Little League game, and that's cool. But if you're on a LinkedIn page, they can see what you've been doing, how you've been doing it this whole way through, what groups you've been a part of, what you've mentored, all this type of stuff. You're very meticulous and very careful. It can't continue to pay off in a way that other social channels may not. I think. I mean, that's like my personal take on it, because it's so employer centric. It's not really like a homie hangout, if you will. It's not Instagram.
Yeah, but it kind of is becoming that, right? It's kind of like I'm seeing these carousels on there of like 40 pages, and everyone's taking their Twitter and like doing Twitter shots and putting it on here.
Also, I mean, I think people are coming to it in different ways. So, for example, if I say Instagram, right now we know exactly what it is, right? It's very visual, it's fun, it's your affinity. Like I watch surfing and guitar and skateboarding and all, it's like whatever I'm into, right? I'm just scrolling all that. When I think about business, I go to LinkedIn very particularly. That's how I use it. I think different people use it differently. I'm not sure someone's like in bed at 11 p.m. just like scrolling through LinkedIn. They may be. I don't know. I don't know those people, but I'm also not a young man anymore. So again, they have changed.
You certainly are a young man, but to me, Instagram is porn. Right?
Yeah.
Instagram is food porn, music porn, murder porn if you're going down NCIS. If you're going down like SVU.
I don't get any of that in my feed. There's
rabbit holes. But like that's what it's about. Whereas LinkedIn, politics, right? And that's what it's for. But LinkedIn is different. John, I'm curious on your take on LinkedIn.
So I'm going to come at this from a slightly unique angle here. So first, I think I like to caveat a lot of my answers with the same disclaimer, which is let's identify what type of companies we're talking to here. So large brands always have the luxury of kind of being able to do everything, test everything, explore everything. But it's the small brands, and let's define small as, I don't know, couple million in revenue or below per year, right?
But we're talking about personal branding here, so let's make sure we have that in the back of our mind.
For sure. But if I'm a small company, couple $1 million a year in revenue, I need to be extremely discerning and judicious about where I put my, again, time, effort, energy, and resources. How am I approaching LinkedIn, my brand? And I am, by the way, that small company, right? And what we're doing is gearing up for a large output of content, right? But first things first, we're not just throwing up on LinkedIn just to be there.
And you're talking about tag here.
Yes,
Okay.
tag, which parlays into my personal brand, and we're going to get to the podcast in a second, right? We're not just throwing anything up there just to put something there. Being extremely thoughtful and deliberate about, okay, where are we going here, and what are we going to put up that's actually going to have value? And now that we've identified it, it's largely going to flow through the niche marketing podcast, right? But before we're in a rush to just start throwing that podcast up there, right now we're in a phase of, and this is my recommendation that answers your question, we're in a phase of listening to others, commenting on other people's content, and identifying kind of who our sphere and allies in this space are going to be. So that way, when we start putting it out, it just doesn't fall on deaf ears and crickets. We've already started to earn goodwill and good faith with the people that we're ultimately trying to get this out to before we're putting the content out. So, you know, you talk about how do you leverage LinkedIn in a thoughtful way for your personal brand? Well, before you do anything for your personal brand, start building some relationships on LinkedIn and identify kind of who your sphere is. And then when you put that content up, you'll probably be in a better place to not only get distribution, but get accurate and solid feedback on how good or strong the content actually is.
Yeah, but the theme of LinkedIn is business, right? The theme of Instagram is whatever you're into at the moment.
Porn.
The theme of Twitter is what? What's the theme of Twitter? What would you say the theme of Twitter is?
Opinions.
Opinions.
Opinions is a great one. No,
Right.
that's really good.
What's the theme of YouTube? How to?
Longer form.
Right? So if you're like, well, the theme of LinkedIn is business, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the theme of, is business. So I don't want to see you swimming with the kids.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's great.
I would agree.
Good for you. But, you know, help me in my business journey on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
I'm a professional. If I go there, I'm looking for anything that's going to help me further and advance my career. I don't go to Facebook for that.
Yeah.
I mean, some people do. I'm sure they do. I don't.
Yeah. It reminds me of one of my favorite business books I read of all time. And now I'm going to give a shout out to my homie Gary V. Jab, jab, right hook.
Yeah.
Where the general premise was, well, two things really. One, actually kind of what I just said, which is test, 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 then go big, right? But the other major theme of that book was right type of content for the right type of platform.
Yeah.
Right. So now I do think the contrarian viewpoint on what you just said is, well, you can pattern interrupt or disrupt the feed. You can stand out from the sleepwalkers or stand out to the sleepwalkers with, you know, a picture at home in the pool with your kids.
Right.
But I think that's the exception, not the rule, right? If everybody starts doing that, it totally changes the platform.
It does.
and it
Here's-
becomes
here's a-
wrong.
Here's a
Right.
interesting thought. So if you went into Barnes and Nobles or your local bookstore and you looked at it like social media and you're like, oh, this is the YouTube section and this is the Twitter section and this is the business section, right? It's like the back shelf here. We know where the business section is. We know the authors. We know the titles of the books. Everybody's in on the joke. Right. And that to me is kind of LinkedIn. It's like it's the business section of the bookstore. Whereas the rest of the things, all these other social media platforms, I want to know what I'm getting when I go to that section of the bookstore.
I don't want a cookbook in the business section.
Please. Right.
Right. If I do, I'm giving it to the clerk and I'm like, something's wrong here.
Right.
Right.
If you're a good person.
If you're a good person. So, okay. So like getting back to personal branding, a couple quick fires right over here. If your personal, I'm going to ask you individually, if your personal brand was a piece of music, Tim, what would it be?
My personal brand was a piece of music. Wow. Oh boy. I would have to go with like a Love Supreme John Coltrane kind of thing.
Ah, you're getting smoky and sultry.
Yeah, a little spiritual.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe very spiritual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly what I would be.
Very cool. John?
So this is a fantastic question, but I hate that I have to answer it right now.
I'm actually afraid of what's going to come out of you.
Can both things be true?
Is it like, are you going punk or are you going...
So I'm in this position, and I think, again, a lot of small business owners can relate to this, where my brand has a style of music, a voice, a tonality, if you will. And historically, we've said that it would probably be some type of jazz, right? Like
Very similar to Tim.
yeah, like we always think of Miles Davis's Freddie Freeloader, you know,
Yeah.
just chill. But as I start to put myself out there and give, you know, myself a brand identity, we're in transition, right? So, you know, I'm like that band that had a consistent catalog that suddenly is about to really deviate off course, you know, like the Deftones, right?
So like,
I was going to say Beastie Boys.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
I was going to say Metallica Load.
I like it.
terrible.
Oh, it wasn't. It was all right.
Steven's the biggest Metallica fan.
Nah,
by the
I'm
way.
not gonna go biggest.
You
Metallica
love the new
fan.
album.
I think the new album is
pretty
actually,
good.
yeah,
pretty
sounds
good. I've
really
heard it,
good.
yeah.
Like the recording style sounds good. James, his voice sounds really
You like
good.
it too?
My kids are into Metallica. What can I say? I listen to it on the way to school.
Wow. How about
Yeah.
Yeah.
this guy
Well,
listens to everything.
if my personal brand were a piece of music, it's funny how. So growing up, like in my teenage years, I was the biggest Kiss fan, and there was everything about Kiss that I just loved, and I never really put my finger on it. It's the promotion, it's the short music, it's the anthemic rock that they brought, it's the show, it's the experience, it's the productizing everything. They were all about the brand.
They were all about
and
the brand.
and they were unapologetic AF about it. And now, as I almost begin to reemerge on social once again, I'm going Kiss about it. Like I'm going Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. Like they could do the farewell tour 15
Yeah.
times and sell out 50 stadiums every time, and they don't give a shit about it. And like that's kind of my personal brand these days.
I'm gonna flip the
Yeah, I
interview
like
around
that.
on you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tim.
Yeah.
Elaborate on that if you could. When you
Sure.
say you're gonna go Gene Simmons, do
Yeah.
you mean you're just gonna be extremely thoughtful and deliberate and productized in everything you do, or you're gonna start sticking your tongue out on podcasts and you know growing your hair long and dressing in tight black?
Now the hair comment
leather.
is rude. We didn't have to go there, okay? Because there's no way to grow the hair long.
forgot about that.
No, I think it's about the productization of everything that they touch, right? It's like they're all about the fan experience. They're all about, you know, being memorable, being. They're all, you know, they have a Kiss coffin. They have a Kiss car. They have Kiss alcohol. They have Kiss condoms. They have Kiss everything that you can think of. They have put their logo on it. It's licensed and it's very thoughtful in how they do it. And so as I start to think about my career and where I'm at and how I can continue to provide value to small businesses and to other marketers, it's like, well, how do I take a page out of their playbook?
Yeah.
So that's how I think about Kiss.
So it's talking with branders on a bag of ice, then.
Do you guys remember the fire and ice schnapps where you
yeah.
would do? It was like one was cinnamon and then the other one was like a mint chill or a
Yeah,
peppermint or
yeah.
something. You did in conjunction. A final question: what is your personal brand whispering in your customers' ears?
That's a good question. I would say you can always do more. You can always be better. Simple. You can always do more. You can always be better. That's it.
Personal brand?
Yeah, we're talking personal brand here.
Not a ton yet because I haven't really gone aggressive with it, but
But your personal brand has always been out there for years.
yeah. Networker, connector, moving, shaking.
So what are you whispering?
My personal brand is whispering, hit this guy up.
Hit this guy up.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a constant like reminder. It's the snooze function on Gmail.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like it.
I am the snooze function.
That's very
Well,
true.
not the snooze function, but like the follow up then, right? Like
Yeah,
I'm
follow up
gonna, and you're actually really good with that on staying top of mind, like when it's needed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. What a great conversation
Super
it's
fun.
been. John, Tim, tell the audience how they can get in touch with you, your URLs, what social platforms you're on, and the URL for the new ice company.
So the agency guide you can find online at theagencyguide.com. Social handles are predominantly Agency Guide HQ, and the new podcast rolling out here in just a week or two is the Niche Marketing Podcast. You can go to nichemarketingpodcast.com.
Great.
Yeah, you can find me at tim@theagencyguide.com or tim@theinsideman.biz if you have any business related questions, but we're here to serve you as a business. So we love connecting brands with agencies. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you at any time if you have any interest in growing, building a brand. And you can always talk to our good friend Steven as well.
And I'm Steven Bacanza, host of the Talking with Branders podcast, brought to you by Branders Magazine, brandersmagazine.com, talkingwithbranders.com. And until next time, peace.